The first movie I ever remember seeing was on TV. I saw Son of Kong, the sequel to King Kong. When my mother was small, she had seen King Kong in the theater when she was 2 years old and was terrified, and she peed all over her dad's leg. So when Son of Kong was coming on, she made it a very family-oriented experience. Both my parents were there, my two brothers and my sister were there. We were gathered around the TV set watching it, and this stop-motion ape came on, and I was fascinated by it. But I wasn't horrified because Son of Kong is a comedy, although it has a heartbreaking ending. I knew it wasn't real because it was jerky and didn't look like a real animal, but I was fascinated by it and thrilled by it. And so that was the first part. And I think most people who get into the horror genre at a young age do so because they feel like they're the outsiders. They don't feel like they belong to a society. They identify more with Frankenstein's monster than with the doctor, you know, and as your body changes, like a werewolf, as you reach puberty, then I think that's another feeling like life is strange. It's not like TV sitcoms, you know. Life is kind of uncomfortable, and it's a way to deal with those changes in your life and the difficulties that nobody can understand but you. Well, for me, I mean, aside from horror having become a career, it's important, I think, to deepen yourself as a human being. True horror is not just a hand on the shoulder making you jump or a cat jumping out of the trash can or something. True horror is all about mortality. And I made a movie about it where there's an art student who thinks horror is glamour and his art is dark and glamorous and fantastic until he gets a phone call that his mother is dying. And being confronted by mortality, everybody's going to be confronted by it, whether it's yourself or someone you love. And having your heart broken, any of these things can be painful, and pain can be dealt with by confronting it much more than by repressing it. The people I don't trust are the people who repress their fears. The people who express them as horror film fans or horror film makers or novelists. Those people aren't nearly as dark. But when you face people, you lose someone close to you, it makes you a deeper human being. And if you're an artist, if you allow it, it makes you a better artist. And to lock yourself off from your fears and your pain keeps you locked off from all the good stuff too. You know, it's like having your heart broken. I'm never gonna fall in love again. Well, then fuck you, you're gonna miss out on the good stuff as well as the bad. And I think horror films and television and games and books, all of those things help you exercise muscles that otherwise go flaccid and, you know, make you a weaker person. Well, what I love about anthology is that it's a variety of visions. You know, these are people who, every filmmaker has their own filmmaking personality. And the ones who really have a strong personality, the kind where you see a scene in a movie, you go, that's Dario Argento, that's John Carpenter. I love that. And so when we had that where Steven Spielberg encouraged it on my first job, I wrote for Amazing Stories. And he brought in everybody he directed a couple himself, Clint Eastwood, Bob Zemeckis, Joe Dante, all these different people, and I wrote scripts, Martin Scorsese, for all these people who were encouraged to do it their own way. And when I got Masters of Horror off the ground, that was the beauty of it. Each of these films has its own personality. And a horror feature film, where you've got 5 stories like in Nightmare Cinema, 5 different stories with their own personalities, you know, they could clash or they could abet one another. They could enhance each other. And the wraparound segments that we put together maybe help make it feel a little more cohesive than that. But we encouraged everybody to make their own films, not to try to make them in a similar style. Young filmmakers now have everything at their fingertips. Anybody can make a movie. That's the good news and the bad news. Anybody can make a movie is great because people who have talent and no money still have access to the tools to make a movie. It's bad because people without talent also have access to make those movies, and they're everywhere. But as far as truly practical and not philosophical advice goes, when you cast your movie, don't use your friends unless they're the best actors you can find. The quickest evidence, the biggest evidence a movie is amateurish is actors who can't act. But they're your best buddies, so they did it with you, and oh, it was a lot of fun. And also, comedy's really difficult to do. People think making a horror spoof is easy. Everybody does it. Horror comedies are rarely funny or scary. It's got to be both. And it's not just you and your friends joking around with each other. Take it seriously.
Hello, I'm Mick Garris, and I'd like to thank you for joining us once again in this special series of major...
I was a journalist at the time doing interviews and the like with various people in and out of the genre. I had done interviews in music as well. I interviewed, when I was a teenager, I interviewed Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and people like that. But this was the Fantasy Film Festival. It was a pay TV channel called the Z Channel in Los Angeles. And they'd run movies. They'd let me know what genre movies were coming. And then I would do like a 15-minute interview that would run before the movie. I had Steven Spielberg on, I had John Carpenter on, I had John Landis on, did lots of people like that, never knowing that years later I would work with these people. But I was just, it was my film school education. I was lucky enough to talk to these people and without commercial interruption or anything. And that's kind of, I'd been interviewing since I was a teenager in high school. And so it was really a manner of my ability to get an education without paying for it.